Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you guys are doing well today. As you might have seen on some of our social medias and on our recent video, we have some very interesting watches listed on our store, and that means we're going to be doing in-depth looks at every single one of those pieces. The one that we're going to start with today is this Omega Chronostop. I think it's a very interesting sports watch from Omega. This one's from 1968 and was a very interesting part of the Omega history, the history of chronographs. And so I'm going to be giving you some information about the history of this specific watch and making sure that you can take a look at this absolutely beautiful watch that's on this really cool kind of orange accented strap. I'm really excited to get into this watch. So without further ado, let's flip perspective so you can take a look at this watch. All right, so we are taking a look at this Omega Chronostop that we recently got for our store, but it's also a really great part of sort of the history of Omega. And so what we're going to be doing is taking a look at the history of this sort of line of watches from Omega, and then we'll also give you some more information about this specific watch. So just to give you a little bit of information about this, I guess the Chronostop. The Chronostop was a chronograph, a 1-minute chronograph that was produced by Omega. The start of it began in 1966. That was when the first Omega Chronostop was released. It was originally intended that this watch would be part of their Seamaster line, but as you can see towards 6 o'clock here, you can see that Geneve is written on this watch. And it was transferred to the Geneve collection from Omega in 1967, which was basically to try and produce and market a more affordable, lower priced chronograph for perhaps the younger buyer. So it was supposed to be a little bit more playful. This watch was also produced as an inspiration for drivers, as it was a very easy 1-minute chronograph with this chronograph starter at 2 o'clock. It was very easy for them to do this. Like I said, this was the Chronostop was originally started in 1966 and then was produced all the way, I think, up until like the 80s. There were two main versions of this watch. So this one you can see has it's just an hours, minutes hand, and then a chronograph hand. But this watch was actually produced with a date as well. This one is running on the caliber 865 movement from Omega. And that's the non-date version of this. And then there is a date version of this, which was with the caliber 920, and that appeared in 1968. And just to give you a general idea about how many of these were actually produced, there were about 124,000 Chronostops produced with the 865 caliber and about 61,000 produced with the date. What's really cool about this one, and I can understand why it was marketed to the younger collector, is that there were so many different variations. You can see blue dial versions of these, you can see sort of this gray dial version, red dial versions. There are some where the dial is actually slanted this way so that you can actually wear it. It's a little bit more focused on sort of the racing versions of these. There's a regatta timer that used the Chronostop sort of watch. There's a roulette version of this, of the Chronostop. So there's so many different variations. The Chronostop was so popular that it actually was the official Omega timer of the Pan American Games in Winnipeg and the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico. So a very popular model, and one that has a very interesting history to it. Looking at this specific one, this is the reference 145.009. As you can see, gray dial with orange Omega logo and orange chronograph hand. It is a manual wind movement, so you can see I'm going to just wind this up a little bit. And this one dates to 1968 according to the movement serial number. The watch itself is 34.5 millimeters in diameter with 18 millimeter lug width. You can see I have this on this really interesting sort of racing strap with these orange accents, which make it even more interesting. Like I said, caliber 865 running in this piece. And I guess what I really need to do is really start that chronograph so you can see how that looks. So like I said, it's a 1-minute chronograph. You basically hit the start button here, and you can see the chronograph is now moving. And then what you end up doing is you press and hold the chronograph button so that it resets. There is no start, stop, reset button like other chronographs. If you know chronographs, there's typically two buttons. On a normal chronograph, there's two buttons. There's the start button, the same button you hit to stop, and then there's normally a reset button that is on the watch. But for this version of the Chronostop, being that it's a 1 minute chronograph, all it is a one button chronograph, which I think is cool. I think mono pusher chronographs are really cool. You can see it has a signed crown by Omega, obviously on an aftermarket bracelet, and the watch is running absolutely spectacularly. So let me go ahead and stop it for you here. So what you basically do is you hold and you press and hold, and it will jump that hour back. Let me just let it get past the top of the hour there, just so that we can get that going here. So what you do is you press and hold, and you can see it jump back to 12 o'clock. So just to give you an idea about what it kind of looks like on the wrist, a really nice size for a vintage watch from the 1960s. It actually wears quite nicely, sort of a contemporary size if you ask me, but looks absolutely phenomenal on the wrist. I really love the fact that this is paired with this really beautiful orange accented strap. Really brings out the chronograph button, and I think is a really great kind of place going into going into Omega if you are looking for something like this. Obviously there are a lot of chronographs that you can choose from if you're looking for an Omega chronograph. The Speedmaster is obviously the most popular, and there are so many different variations of that. Like I said, this was kind of marketed as a more affordable option for the younger buyer to get into chronographs from Omega. I actually find this one to be a little bit more interesting than the Speedmaster. Not saying that the Speedmaster is not interesting at all, but I do think that this is a little bit more of a unique one and a relatively affordable one even today compared to the Speedmaster itself. What's really cool, I really love the sort of racing sort of inspiration to this watch. You can see it definitely has sort of an elongated case here, the stainless steel case. A little bit more towards what is probably a little bit more known as sort of the 70s in case design, but yeah, I really like it. I also really like the crown and the chronograph pusher placement on this. I think it looks really phenomenal. Relatively thin, not too thick, and isn't going to wear super chunky as opposed to some of the other watches that we've got in for the Life on the Wrist shop. Nonetheless, a really cool looking watch. And so, like I said, this is available on our store, so you can be sure to check that out. I'll put a link in the description to where this watch is listed. You can take a look at it. There are also more pictures there as well, so you can see some more pictures there, and I've got a little bit of a description for this watch as well. We will also have an editorial post where you can read more about this specific watch and the history of the Omega Chronostop. It's a sports watch. It's a vintage sports watch from the 1960s, almost 1970s, and really looks phenomenal. I'll be sad if this one ends up going, but I encourage you to definitely take a look at this specific Chronostop. As you can see here, we've got a couple more pieces that we've got in for our store. We'll be doing videos, in-depth videos on those to come, so stay tuned. And with that said, let me turn it back and we can close up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at that Omega Chronostop. I'm super stoked to have this on our store. It is an absolutely beautiful watch. I'm going to be very sad to let this one go. It just looks absolutely phenomenal on my wrist. I have relatively small wrists, but I think at 34.5 millimeters and this sort of elongated case, I think it looks really great on anyone's wrist. And it's just such a cool complication too. I think that's something that I really love about vintage watches is the watches that have cool complications. This is a mono pusher 1 minute chronograph, and I think that is just absolutely unique and not something you're going to find very often. And you're not going to find a mono pusher chronograph for very inexpensive prices. They're relatively expensive, and I think this is a fairly affordable place to be when it comes to vintage chronographs. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Be sure to check out the link in the description to the specific watch. You can check out our corresponding article, as well as some more pictures about this watch, if you are interested. If you are new to Life on the Wrist, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like these types of videos. If you like vintage watches, modern watches, topics within the watch world, that's exactly what we cover here. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about this Chronostop, and if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button for us, it really does help us out with our analytics. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time.